PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers have wrapped up spring practice, and we got a chance to see the guys on the field for the annual spring game, and it was a lot of fun. That shouldn't be surprising considering PJ Fleck's approach to things. We got Daniel House on the line from GophersGuru.com, so please check out his work right there again at GophersGuru.com. Daniel, how you doing today?
Doing well. We made it through spring ball. It was perfect weather, fans back in the stands. They had 10,000 at TCF Bank Stadium. So it was nice to feel that energy again and not the dead zone when a guy runs into the end zone.
Absolutely. I caught the spring game on television. And as I noted off the top, PJ, I know that there were a number of peripheries to the activities on the actual field, but the one I enjoyed the most was the three-point shooting contest between the two basketball coaches prior to kickoff. That was fabulous.
Yeah, they had Lindsey Whalen and Ben Johnson as honorary coaches. So each of them, one was on the maroon team, Lindsey Whalen, and Ben Johnson ran the gold team. And then they did a three-point shootout and got to see their shooting skills a little bit on display. PJ does unique things like that. He doesn't want to do a normal coin toss. He's going to come up with something creative for the spring game. There's always something that PJ Fleck rolls out that surprises people.
And it was apropos with the two basketball coaches in play. Daniel, when they showed Mohamed Ibrahim's statistics from last season, I just had to shake my head. I was certainly cognizant of them by the conclusion of the 2020 season, but just to be reminded that he basically racked up good statistics for a number one running back for a full season in 7 games. He scored 15 touchdowns. That's crazy. He would have been on like a 27 or 28 touchdown pace over the course of a full season that he was that good. Stating that, of course, he needs some relief. He needs they need insurance behind him. They also need to give him a blow from time to time. And that was one of the big takeaways that I took in regards to what they were trying to figure out this spring.
Yeah, they're trying to find a complimentary back to Mohamed Ibrahim. And you saw last year with Trey Potts getting some action, a guy who is really good in the screen game, outside zone. Rushing scheme fits him super well because he does a nice job of making the first defender miss. And then also you're able to really get into the running back room and see a guy like Cam Wiley, who when he came out, he had the athletic testing. He was one of the top Nike Spark score players for athleticism in that recruiting class. So being able to get him, and now they're trying to develop his pad level and his technique and get him where he needs to be. But you said it perfectly. I mean, Mohamed Ibrahim cannot carry the ball at that type of volume again next season. I mean, he was, getting 25 plus carries a game, sometimes on the 30 range. So Minnesota's got to try to find some balance offensively and then also be able to get some of these other guys in here. Bryce Williams played well during the spring game as well, a guy with a lot of agility, a shifty runner. He played quite a bit as a true freshman and made an impact last year. Didn't see as much of him, but Minnesota also has Kai Thomas, who is one of the top players in Kansas. He has not saw much action, so we're waiting to see what he brings to the table as well. So Minnesota has prepared the running back room with a few contributors, but Mo is the guy that's going to be spearheading everything. One of the most unique players that I've covered, just his personality, way he handles himself, dressing up like PJ Fleck for the spring game, wearing the sunglasses and the tie underneath the quarter zip. He just has a good time, and his teammates love him. He's a big leader on this team, and next year probably a draft pick for the Gophers.
The Minnesota offense seems to be set, at least in regards to that trio, quarterback, running back, wide receiver at the number one spots. Obviously, Chris Audman-Bell, Tanner Morgan comes back, has a ton of experience. And even the first line of wide receivers behind Audman-Bell seems to be pretty established from what I understand. But finding that next layer, that depth at wide receiver, your thoughts there, and take it through the rest of the offense.
That's the biggest question mark, is the whole wide receiver room. You got Chris Audman-Bell and Daniel Jackson leading the way. Daniel Jackson played really well as a freshman. I think he's developed physically. He's a good route runner, able to get separation. Chris Audman-Bell is your guy. You're going to throw the ball up. He attacks the ball. We saw some of those contested catches during the spring game. He's one of the best in that area. So Minnesota will throw the ball vertically to him, and Daniel Jackson's route running has taken a nice step. But what happens behind those guys? Is there someone that's going to emerge as a complementary option? I don't know. It's probably maybe Brady Boyd. a freshman from Texas who tore it up down there. Vertical playmaker. I was so impressed with his route running and his details. He worked with David Robinson, a wide receiver coach down in Texas that's worked with Emmanuel Sanders, Des Bryant, Antonio Brown, a lot of top receivers. Played in a really, really big program down there, South Lake Carroll High School. Was in big games all the time, playing against top talent. And you see him physically, looks like he's ready to play. And that's what I was looking for in the spring. Is this guy physically ready? And I see it. He made a great play on a fade in the spring game, being able to flash his hands, leg, get open. He's the type of guy that can help vertically. I think they need another perimeter receiver that can run routes and get open. He's a guy I'm watching. Mike Brown-Stevens as well, a slot receiver, actually nephew of John Legend, the famous musician. So that's a fun fact about Mike Brown-Stevens. So I think Mike Brown-Stevens is a dynamic slot option, someone that can help in the intermediate game, and he's progressed a lot. I've heard really good things about him. They also brought in Dalen Wright, a transfer from Texas A&M. Did not play in the spring game, has a big learning curve to adjust to this offense. I'm kind of curious to see how that goes, but those are a few names that I'm watching currently. Clay Geary had a nice spring game as well. He's more of an exclusive slot receiver, but there are a lot of question marks outside of the top two. And I think Minnesota has to have a wide receiver 3 and 4 step up so that they can get some balance offensively, like we mentioned, because I did a big study on the website if subscribers want to look about early down tendencies and how Minnesota really skewed to running the football, specifically on first down. So finding that balance and becoming explosive and finishing plays. I mean, how many times last year did the Gophers have a play that stopped at inside the 5-yard line? Chris Ottman-Bell was the king of plays inside the 5. He would catch the ball and land inside the 5 and not finish the score. And then they were kind of calling him 1-yard Mo because he'd get the 1-yard touchdown or the 2-yard touchdown because they couldn't finish the play. So scoring from depth is something that I want to see the Gophers do this year.
We like to tout ourselves as being a college football platform here for the smart fan. If you want to head on to that graduate level, what Daniel just outlined there is a lot of what he has to offer there in regards to just some tremendous breakdowns from a metric standpoint across the board, some unique things that you won't see anywhere else. So check out Daniel's work there at gophersguru.com. When we look at the defense, I'll just leave it like this, both sides of the ball in regards to how you feel about this team today versus before the first spring practice, taking everything into its entirety, who really helped themselves, who maybe took a step back. How does this team look different than it did a month ago?
I was looking at the defensive line coming into this spring season going, all right, were the additions of Niles Pinckney and Val Martin enough to get this defensive line where it needed to be? Because dating back to when PJ Fleck arrived here, I don't think the pass rush has been effective at getting to the quarterback with 4 rushers, and the data supports that. Minnesota had to use blitzing a lot in 2019. It was very effective. They did a nice job of blending it up, and they were able to stop the run enough. But last season, you saw them on first and second down giving up so many chunks, and the teams are running the ball so effectively that they were in 2nd and 3, 3rd and 3 a lot. You weren't in the 3rd and long situations. Minnesota was one of the worst teams at even getting to 3rd down defensively, and that makes it a big uphill climb. You want to get people into 3rd and long, and then Joe Rossi is a very creative blitz scheme coordinator that loves to move guys around and use his front 7 creatively. So that's what they have to get back to. And when I left spring ball, I said Niles Pinckney is definitely going to be a big-time contributor. You get a guy that's played more than 1,100 snaps on a national championship team at Clemson, a guy that can get penetration, get off of blocks, uses his hands really well. Val Martin as well from NC State, a guy that will probably be used more as a pass rusher coming from the 3 technique spot. They got a lot deeper at the interior defensive tackle position, which I think was huge. And also having Boye Mafe come back, one of the most athletic pass rushers in the country. He's going to be someone that could make some noise this year. He already did last season, take another step. Does Sezi Atome well take another step forward in his development as well? It's a big question mark. But even outside of that, you look at guys at the rush end position. Thomas Rush, so fitting that he's a rush end with the last name Rush. But Rush moved from linebacker to rush end right before last season and did not have much time to learn the technique. He's starting to get better. Danny Strigow, a guy that they loved coming out of Orono. He was a top high school wrestler. in the state, and he has that leverage game. You see those guys that are wrestlers, they translate really well to the defensive line position. So having those guys, MJ Anderson, another guy who played well in the spring game, Joyner flashed. He had a sack, a couple of pressures, ended up getting one of the MVP trophies for the game. They're a lot younger at defensive line and the defensive line, but they've shown flashes. They've developed, gained some in-game experience. I think that extends to the second level of the defense with Cody Lindenberg, a guy who's improved physically, already had the instincts, the range, the athleticism, but needed to, get that physical build where it needed to be so he could get off of blocks. And there are a lot of different guys in the second level. That could be one of the breakout spots for the Gophers as a linebacker position, because just the processing and having the guys in front of them that can control a gap, that's a big thing. I think one of the bigger question marks on defense, Mark, is the cornerback position, who emerges alongside Coney Durr. Terrell Smith had a great spring. I've heard phenomenal things about him. Got a lot of experience as a true freshman, but needed to develop his technique and quit being as grabby as a defensive back. Saw him, make a couple of plays at an interception to ice the game. He's a guy that could be an X-factor player for the Gophers. They need him to step up and find that cornerback too to replace Coney Durr.
Daniel, of course, each coach wants to compete for a championship each and every year, but they have their realistic view of where they stand and how the roster's cycling that particular year. So in reading between the lines from PJ Fleck, do you believe that he is confident that he's got the team to gun for the Western Division Championship?
He came out right away at the start of the season and talked about, this is one of the most experienced teams I've coached. I have depth at every level. He was comparing it back to the Western Michigan teams that he had that were so successful, and one's going to the Cotton Bowl. He's not a guy that's going to come out and set that bar right away, Mark, like saying, hey, I love the depth that this team has and the experience. He's been talking a lot, in the past years about getting to this point where they have depth up front. That's going to be the forte of this team on the offensive line. They got a lot of experience coming back. Daniel Falele, Curtis Dunlap returning after not playing last season. Offensive line is just filled with depth. Defensive line added some pieces. You got to be able to win in the trenches if you want to take that next step as a program. And PJ has been trying to get to that point where there's depth specifically on that offensive line. And I feel like this is the best group that they've had while he's been at Minnesota. So that's the foundation. And now with, the depth that they have on defense, the experience that those guys gained last year. I mean, PJ made a choice last year. He said, I'm going to play those younger guys, even despite all this challenges with player development due to the pandemic, because playing them now will only benefit the program into the future. So that was the approach PJ took. And I think it could end up paying off as they go into these next couple of seasons here, because those guys can come in and play right away, move into impactful roles, or be key depth players if injuries strike. So this team is definitely positioned well, especially with the depth on the defensive side of the ball. Only position on that side that's a question mark is cornerback. I'm not sure how that all is going to shake out.
I could listen to Daniel House break down personnel all day. So, Daniel, we appreciate you stopping by again. Take the deep dive at gophersguru.com with Daniel. We appreciate you again. We'll catch up with you sometime this summer to get us set for Minnesota football in August camp.
Always fun stopping by. Thanks for having me, Mark.